What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Sunday Slaughter podcast. This is episode 7. We're coming to you from the North Coast in the Slaughterhouse. From the South Coast, we have Charles with me today.
What's up, everybody?
And then from the sunny West Coast, we have Karl from West Coast Bannerman. What's up, man?
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I'm ready to get right into it. I know that this podcast it tends to be a week behind with all the visions that came out, but today we are talking about the Targaryen reveal. Before we get into the deck, let's have a quick discussion on their iteration in 1.6, what their identity was. So let's start off with Karl here. Were you a Targaryen player in 1.6?
For almost a solid year now. Well, when they first arrive, excitement, of course, right? Not just new toys, but a new faction. Not just new faction, but Targaryens. Come on. So very excited. I liked the lore of the Targaryens. Really, really cool to see. I have Fire and Blood sitting next to me, actually, the book. Really cool to see the show being made in the future. That's going to be awesome. But for the game wise, all Cav starter box was like, okay, this is what I'm talking about. And then you quickly see just how squishy this starter box is, right? So coming from the previous style that I used to play which was already aggression, but I can be aggressive and survive playing with some certain Boltons or certain Starks. So those are the two factions I was playing. Targaryens was not the case. Targaryens was you need to time it right, tempo it right, or guarantee yourself the kill when you go in, and that pretty much is impossible. So what ended up happening with me a lot was pretty much I should have a T-shirt made or something about the cursed charge dice. Right,
Yeah.
like that damn charge die, like that just, and it's blaming dice, right? Come on, it's childish, but I mean, if it doesn't go your way, like that ruins a Targaryen player's day, like completely. So sure, you got Dany, right? So sure, I'd put Dany and CU in there, and I'd re-roll the charge dice and get 2 1s in a row, like stuff like that. Like so, that was always fun. I had the most success and the most fun using Ramsay Commander in my Targaryens. So that might just speak a little bit of something to it. Just because they needed that little extra start of round attack just to do even more, right? Like to ensure that kill or to start off their combo to make sure the kill went through to get a little push.
And mentioning that start around attack is going to make Chris relapse into depression again. He just got over it after last week.
Yeah.
I'm kind of crying about Ramsay too, so no worries. But I mean, yeah. So I could totally tell what they were trying to do with the whole like Dothraki Horde. But and they almost, when we get there, I'll talk about why exactly. But they almost nailed it, I think, with this. Still not there quite as what I was hoping for. But instead, what you ended up feeling like what was happening game wise is the entire, or each unit separately, or the entire faction, I guess you could say, was like these little mini missiles, and if they didn't kill their target, then you're doomed. Like, so it wasn't as much as I don't know, they didn't have as much mobility as you'd think because of opponents' factions cards, or just a simple space on the tactics board can just ruin your day, maneuver, and then all that work you've done is you're not going to get that flank rear anyways. So it just wasn't as effective, I guess. So I guess that's my summarize of my thoughts. The dragons came, of course. That was fun, exciting. I got to play when they leaked them. I played with the McFarlane toys. They had these little.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I already had those toys for future event prize support already in a box. So I took him out and opened him up, and me and the kid played, and my 8-year-old smashed me with dragons. In fact, I think he only used one dragon and smashed me. So, good times. But it's just it's we don't have to go into that kind of little depressing anticlimactic event of when dragons were spoiled, because like I was like so hyped and excited, and then just so sad instantly, because I don't know, it's like the unit this game has been like kind of building up to. It's like the climax, like when the dragons arrive, and then it didn't quite really it didn't come in with a splash, like so it's kind of weird.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And
But
it was awkward timing too, because they came out with them. We got to experiment with them for a couple months on TTS, of course, but then they dangled 1.7 in front of us. But I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about this reveal. But I think you hit the nail on his head, where your whole game plan was predicated most of the time on hitting that charge. When you don't, if you can't guarantee killing that unit or playing the card that you needed to, everything just fell apart, and it was sad times. One of the first matches recorded on TTS that I played against Charles was a Targaryen match versus his free folk, and I played Barristan, and he brought a pretty standard insig spam list. I was confident going into the match because Charles was newer. He wanted to do a ranked match, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to bring Targs and see what Barristan can do. And I believe it was round 2. I failed to charge, and I crumbled from that moment on. It was really unfortunate.
Oh yeah, I even played Harma that game. Jeez. Yeah.
Don't remind me.
I'm looking at it. It was legit like a World Cup list. Like it wasn't even like yeah. Like for a minute, I was like derping around with Tormund just to kind of like entertain people, because I was new and I knew people didn't like playing free folk. I didn't even like give you that shot. I was just like, hey, Harma. Wreck.
I'll give my quick summary on what I thought about Targaryens in 1.6. They suffered from some of the obvious things, such as, number 1, the prevalence of Walder. And that plays into certain things like activations, the power of activations, because one of the things that would help Targs in boosting their activation count would be to take the solo Jorah, disregarding the fact that his stats weren't great. But sitting at 2 wounds, that's a guaranteed kill by round 3 if your opponent was running Walder. Their unit set at a weird point cost. Without a core 5-point unit, you're relying on Screamers and Outriders to sort of fill out your army. And if you wanted to throw attachments in there, you're looking at 7-point units. And that's already treading into the elite territory. And their stats, honestly, to me, weren't elite. They just didn't seem elite to me. And then with the release of Unsullied, they just suffered from being surrounded by any other faction. And if you're trying to be aggressive, you get stuck in combat. You're just sort of left with your pants down. So I was really excited to try them out when they were released. They were definitely shiny and new, and then the flaws became blatantly obvious. So Charles, I know you don't play much Targs, but I'm sure you play against them a lot. What are your thoughts before we move into the deck?
So yeah, so that faction, my biggest issue was the way they were point costed. Honestly, the points just didn't really add up, right? At times, I felt that as a cavalry unit, they were one of the few that was actually costed appropriately for how impactful the free maneuver is. But at the same time, they didn't have any infantry really to support them. Like taking an 8-point or 9-point unit of cav, but then taking another 9-point unit infantry is bad math in regards to how the game is played. And that's true of basically because of how the scenarios are. Any game that has one of the most prevalent win conditions is objective based. Cavalry is going to have a hard time in any war game. So coming into an all cav faction or predominantly cav faction, it was going to be real tough no matter what card players did. And they really need to get some more affordable infantry in there. Now they have neutrals, and that's great, but you don't ever want to have to play neutrals to feel like you have a complete roster, right? They should be an alternative, not mandatory. And that was always what I felt about Targaryens, is that neutrals were mandatory. Mind you, they are a younger faction, but it still felt bad to feel like they were mandatory. Like they still should have had. I still say this to this day. They should have some sort of affordable infantry option, even if it's you know, even if it's something like conscripts without insignificant, just a cheap unit with bad stats. Like it doesn't matter. But it shouldn't have to be part of their neutrals points. Or just Stormcrows, right? Which thematically it makes some sense, and I'm cool with it to a degree. But from a design point versus a lore point, I think from a design point, I always felt that was just really awkward for the Targ players.
That's where the freedmen are supposed to fill that role. We just don't know when they're going to come out. I would have loved to see them released with the dragons. I think a unit like that would definitely help Targaryens out.
I wonder if Danny will be able to like feed one of them to keep the dragons happy or something, or have them like, oh, go snack on a free. No, I'm just kidding.
That's that's pretty dark. That's that's pretty dark, but I like it.
You know what though? I mean, I would prefer that over them ignoring panic, right? If it was just like, within long range, sacrifice an infantry model. This unit ignores panic tests. At least make them lose one wound somewhere on the table, versus just ignoring panic tests. It could be a 12-inch bubble. I'll take it.
This is just a small, minor pet peeve that I had when they were first released. I felt like the Targaryens have really great characters from the lore. But one thing I noticed with the deck and some of the abilities of these characters was they were being reused. I would have loved to see Grey Worm with a unique ability rather than Boldness and Courage that we already saw in 2 other character attachments. That's sort of sprinkled out throughout their deck. We already saw Hit and Run. We saw Belwas's card with Alistair. I forget what it's called, but I think this is something that Bob had brought up as well, because he experimented with Targs. Was, we would have liked to see a little bit more creativity to set them apart. And I know that the designers didn't really set any rules or precedences saying that every character needed to be its own thing and shouldn't share an ability, but that was just sort of a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, I can totally feel it. I think that plays into like what each character was resembled within the Targaryen faction, which the designers kind of have talked about it. Like, for example, the Great Karl, like they could have easily just used a mechanic that they already use and have a Dothraki keyword, like, yeah. Then that would be super thematic and you could have cool things happen with just Dothraki. Like you'd get really into it. One thing I just thought of is like, when the Great Call activates, one friendly Dothraki unit engaged can make a free retreat. Like keep the horde moving.
Yes,
that's one of the things that I thought it was missing. One thing, I guess I'll just say it now. One thing I was hoping for, like crossing my fingers to no end, was that at least the vets would get Swift Strike, and instead they got whatever it is. They got
Shot or whatever.
They got sudden, they got Swift Retreat, right? So they got to get hit first. And it's like that hit's gonna be brutal. I already know. Anyways, but just like ping, ping, ping as you go, as you move, as the horde continues to move. Like that's what I wanted it to feel like. And like I said earlier, like as soon as you get in there, you just get freaking smashed. And it's like okay, but same kind of thing. They could have had this Dothraki keyword. Belwas. Oh, I can't remember lore. Belwas. Where does he even come from? Was it it was a mercenary company, right? Oh no, he's a pit fighter.
Yeah, he was from the fighting pits.
Yeah. So he could have I don't know. Just you could have each of these awesome characters have their own like keyword system that just functions like affiliation basically, right? Because that's already exists. That's easy to do. But yeah, you're right. We saw lots of repeated things. Like when what's her name, Queen of Marine, I think, got spoiled. I was like, okay, now there's like nothing left of Lannisters that there's Lannisters have nothing of their own anymore because they took Targaryen supremacy as a card, and I was like, okay, that's it. Lannisters have been stripped completely.
All right, let's just jump right into it. Let's talk about the updated 1.7 deck. And we're starting off with Overrun, one of the most powerful cards, I think, in the Targ 1.6 deck. And we see a little bit of a change here. So when a friendly unit surges forth, instead of surging forth, that unit performs one charge action. If you control the horse, it may reroll any charge distance dice. So let me bring up the old iteration of the card so we can compare it here. So the old version says when a friendly unit destroys an enemy unit with a melee attack, instead of maneuvering, that unit may pivot and then make a free charge action. If you control the horse, it gains +2 to its charge distance roll. So I'm going to ask you guys, because I feel like you're better at deciphering some of the card text and the rulings that come along with it. Now, with this new version of Overrun, can you pivot?
No.
No.
Well, during a charge action you can, but you have to. You don't get the free pivot before the charge action though.
Yeah, you don't get to. So before currently 1.6, you get to make your pivot to establish line of sight for a legal charge, and then make your normal charge pivots and charge. Right. And what Karl's getting at is that now you have to already have legal line of sight at the time the unit is destroyed. Then you can pivot to optimize your charge, but it has to already be in your line of sight prior to that.
Gotcha. So we see a slight nerf here to Overrun.
Yes. Yeah. There's also a slight opportunity with just cleaning up wording, and that is perhaps in the future we'll see, hopefully Targaryen in this case, maybe an attachment or unit say when a friendly unit, let's see, how do I word this? When an enemy engaged with this unit is destroyed by another friendly unit, it may also surge forth.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing.
And because this triggers off of a surge forth and not the unit actually doing the destruction, then you can play Overrun on that other unit. So we might see something like that happen, which would be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, depending on what they do, it might even be as open as anytime an engaged enemy unit is destroyed by any attack or an attack, doesn't matter, just an attack action. This unit may surge forth. That way, if they if they were destroyed as part of a panic trigger from a range attack or whatever, they could also surge. That would just let you do it basically as long as it was done with an attack action, not a crown zap or like a game mode like the walls in Honed and Ready. You would just get the surge. Like basically, when you become unengaged by not a retreat, by attack action, you can go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something like Battle Rush or something,
Yeah, so I guess we'll just have to get used to being sure, right? Before we make the attack roll, make sure you got that 50, 100, or 50 the other way exactly how you want it, just in case you get to trigger your Overrun. So.
Yeah, Michael said it in the On the Table podcast that basically the incentive was for Overrun. You also see it on Victarian's card, and New Torment and stuff also could do stuff like that. And that it's meant to be that whenever you overran other units, it should have been in a bit of realism, right, in wartime realism, from like a flank charge, right, or an interesting angle is what's going to allow you to like crash into the side of another unit, right? So you should have to line those things up, and it's part of the skill cap. I actually like the Overrun change a lot.
All right, let's move on to the next card. We have Sudden Retreat. And it says, after an enemy unit completes a melee attack, the defender performs one retreat action. Definitely different than Swift Retreat in 1.6, where the immediate thing that jumps out to me is they got rid of if you control the horse, one enemy disengaged suffers D3 wounds. I think this is their attempt at getting rid of cards and abilities that just automatically deal wounds. What do you guys think about this card?
Not enough text.
Yeah, it does look a little strange.
That's the first thing I like. Okay, and what? Like, that's not that it's not good, but it's like, damn, you got a lot of space there. Like, can you put something? Like, I don't know. I don't care what it is. Like, if I get, yeah, even if you,
it looks like a misprint.
Yeah, even if you're making it worse, and like, unless you have the horses when the defender also becomes weakened or something like that. I don't know, just something that's like, I don't know, something for the horse, something for like, I don't know. It's just so nothing there. Like, but it's a good card. It's not bad.
It's simple. It's efficient. It's fine.
It's fine.
I think it's fine, right? I think it's actually a good card.
Yeah.
Obviously, for a lot of reasons, you're a cav unit. Being stuck in is your number one fear at all times, right? Like you mentioned, keep the horde moving. It's a good card. Don't have to talk about a whole lot. It's simple. It does what it does. It's a good card.
I feel like this card would have been a good opportunity to utilize the double ability, just because there is a lot of room on the card. That bugs me. And that's something they're introducing in 1.7. We would have liked to see something like that with a card like this too, just to have some versatility, right? So if you get stuck with it round one, maybe draw a card or something, or replace the zone effect. But it is what it is. It is simple, so it has that going for
I
it.
think you have to have a couple of easy to play cards in a deck. Because if you look, when we get further in the deck, they actually have a lot of modal cards in their deck. Like they get a 4th commander card now. They've got a lot of secondary actions. They've got a lot of extra triggers based on other stuff. Like their cards are actually pretty stacked as far as like multiple steps of resolving the card already. I think it's probably for the best that they had at least one simple card.
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right. Like,
Because like new players are gonna have a hard time playing this deck. I'm gonna be honest. There's a lot to read on these cards if they're brand new to the game. These are not necessarily noob friendly cards. They're not. That's the most friendly card they have.
That's true. The one thing I'll say that's not friendly, unfortunately, is that this entire effect is the exact same as the veterans effect, but they're different names. I don't know why.
Interesting. I never noticed that.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to change from swift to sudden because that's exactly what it is. It's sudden. It's not exactly swift because you're not like guaranteeing 6 inches on your retreat or anything like that. It's not extra fast. Like it's just sudden. It's a reaction.
Well, hang on. They're not the exact same. They're not the exact same.
Oh.
Sudden retreat is when an enemy unit completes a melee attack. It does not have to target the unit you are retreating. Oh, it does say the defender performs. You're right. It does say the defender. Yeah, never mind.
I wish it wasn't defender. I was gonna say that. Like, if you're talking Dothraki Horde, it'd be really cool if it didn't have to be the defender that makes the retreat.
Yeah, I actually thought it was cooler than it was. No, it's the defender. So it is the exact same thing, basically. It's just worded different.
Yeah, it just has to be worded slightly different because it's a unit ability, but it's the same thing. So having it being named different is kind of weird, but it's all good. Yeah. Little nitpicky.
Yeah, I agree that I am kind of mixed bag or mixed signaled on the. We're going to clean up wording of names of things, and some things, units, abilities are still the same name as a card, and in some cases, they should be the same and they're not. And then in some cases, you have cards again, tactical approach or whatever, where it's the same name but 2 different abilities still. So I'm not quite sure what they actually cleaned up.
Let's see if they cleaned up anything else within this deck. Next card, Swift Reposition. Start of any turn. Target 1 friendly combat unit. It shifts 2 inches. If you control the horse, that unit performs a 3-inch maneuver action instead. So I can't be sure if there was any reference from the designers that mentions nerfing cards like Swift Advance.
If you read down the bottom of the article, Michael's comment is literally, "This is the new Swift Advance."
Oh, he literally says that.
Yeah, it's right at the bottom.
I guess we'll see if this card becomes the new Swift Advance. Time will tell whether or not a card like this is still a clutch card to have. You know what I mean?
Oh, it is. It is. I hope with the honing in on identities that perhaps Rob will lose one of his ridiculous cards and he'll have the Swift Reposition in his deck versus the entire Stark army. Not everyone from the north is swift that can reposition on a snap of your finger, so perhaps that'll be a thing. But I definitely, it's still okay. So once again, going back to like wording and quoting, which is never cool to do because the designers are awesome. They give us, they respond to us and they fix things, and I love it. But it was like no one should ever have a free action for no cost, right? And like, well, like, sure, yes, Swift Advance was a huge deal because it's like just boom, infantry, free maneuver, and then you even get bigger buffs if you have the horse zone. here, but here it's still kind of just for free. Like, like for example, forced march, you get weakened if you do it. Like this is just boom, you get to do it. It's like, well, it's kind of it is nerfed, but it's still similar. Like there isn't really a cost. Like you just get to do free movement,
Yeah,
free act.
and
So.
while it is a little more limited on distance, total distance you can do it with, most of the time when you use the Swift Advance, you try to bait your opponent a lot of times into a discouraging charge like a 4+, and they wouldn't do it. Well, even a shift now makes it for you a 2+ charge, right? If you have the same movement speeds, so all you need is a shift half the time, or a 3H maneuver is to like get into a flank. That's plenty. But also, this is now no longer targets just infantry, which with events used to be just infantry. So in a way, it's now more open as well. So the overall ramifications of this card are a little unknown because giving Cav another 2 inches already, or another 3-inch maneuver on top, or let's say mammoths don't change that much and they can still change maneuvers into tramples, right? This now can target a mammoth where currently Swift Advance cannot target a mammoth, right? So I agree with Karl here that, again, some of that mixed signaling that I've said about in the past, that, they used some absolutes that clearly weren't really as concrete of a design philosophy as they made it sound, that this is still a very strong free action, basically.
Another question for you guys. If an ability or a card grants +1 movement, can you grant the +1 to a shift?
Well,
Depends on how it says.
If the shift says you're using your speed,
Yeah.
So a shift is just defined as orthogonal movement, right? Depending on what it is tied with that shift, if it says shift its speed or shift 2 inches or 3 inches, then that's how much you shift. If you're granting a bonus to your speed, then that bonus would apply to a shift if it says shift your speed. So.
Yeah, same way rough terrain hinders the shift, right? Because rough terrain specifically says anytime you would move 1 less at the end of the movement, right? So if you had something that blanketed increase any moves you made by an inch, right, in some way, then it could apply if it was generic. But if it specifically adds +1 to your little foot speed symbol on your card, like you see with a lot of old Targ cards, then it wouldn't apply unless the shift specifically said up to your speed value, like he's saying.
Yeah, one thing I will say about this card, I think that's going to be, well, I mean, you already saw it with people playing against Targs, but what I guess what I'm saying is it's not going to go away, and now it's going to be with, I mean, not Targs, Starks, and now it's going to be with Targs, which is, you see a lot of, at least in the games I've seen and played, you see a lot of those really accurate measuring of, okay, I'm just out of your reachable distance, right? Like I'm going to position right here perfectly just so you can't quite get me, and it's like swift reposition. And you're like, ah,
yeah.
It's like, so I think that belongs with Targs. I'm happy to see it. I'm happy it's not super strong, and we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah, the start of any turn is the kicker there.
Yeah,
that's huge. Okay,
yeah, that's
so
the other thing too, is that he's right, is that this doesn't actually tied to the unit's activation, whereas Swift Advance was when the friendly unit activates.
Oh yeah, no, this can be totally
right? Like,
defensive. Yeah.
Yeah, this could be just whenever you feel like it, I'm going to move something around.
All right, so we knocked out the first 3 cards that are pretty simple, straightforward, and then now we get into the card literature. We have a lot of text incoming. So, Fire and Blood, it says when a friendly unit is performing a charge action, before rolling charge distance dice, choose 1. If you control the horse, choose 2 instead. First option is this unit may reroll charge distance. The second is if this unit successfully charges, its melee attacks gain Sundering. And then the third option is after the charge, melee attacks gain Vicious this turn. I like seeing versatile cards. Powered up by the horse, that's something we will see a lot, I'm sure. When you're charging in and it's guaranteed, this is going to be a nasty card, especially with when we get into the spoiled units here. Karl, what do you think?
I am happy to see the first bullet. So I talked about it before, but like it's and I don't know, it's gonna be, I forget my complete total thoughts on the new terrain, but I got scared. But but yeah, making those charges is, I'm sure, still going to be huge for Targs. So really happy to see the first bullet. Um, looks like we're going to be going after that horse just like before, as much as possible. So hopefully get 2 of these, and yeah, I don't know what else to say. Yeah, pumping up your attacks, sure. The Sundering and the Vicious is tied to melee only. So when we talk about units, like you said later, we'll see that, man, we're pretty good with ranged, right? Right. So that's kind of like okay, but of course it's a charge. Oh, of course it's tied to a charge, but like there's so many things that Tarks can do. Like you it'd be cool if it was I don't know, not have that limitation for perhaps future space. I guess you could say, like I said, I was always wishing for like a swift strike type of thing to happen with Targs. So it's just one of those like get in, get it done cards. You know, like this is your card you play when you got to get it done. And so I like to see that in the base deck. This is exactly what I want. So I'm happy. It's not too crazy. It's not too crappy. So yeah.
Yeah, in the world of cav and even infantry, where you're going to charge on a 1+ is still making it, you're basically rolling for disorderly. Getting in a card like this prior to rolling the charge dice, meaning disorderly charge can't stop you from playing the card, is real important. But what you're going to see about the horse zone is that Targaryens are a 1-zone faction. Again, some of what we talk about with neutrals. I am not a fan of that. I do think some factions, like Night's Watch, had too many zones to keep track of. But 1-zone factions are problematic, in my opinion. And we're going to see the very next card, Field Control, is going to be a great talking point as to why. You can also tune in some of these other content creators. I know Turning Grounds on Monday went in pretty deep on the 1-zone faction problem as well. For the Song of Ice and Fire stats guys. But basically, this card's going to be Sundering and Vicious every time you can, right? Because that's as fully loaded as an attack needs to be most of the time. Those are kind of your efficiency skills. Get through armor, get the panic in. Panic is still plenty of damage. But I don't like that this is the beginning again of there being a 1-zone faction, because for all you people out there who are really hoping that playing the tactics board early in the round is not strictly going to be the best play every time anymore, and it makes you feel cooler to push your models forward and just fight in the middle of the board because that's what you like about war games. There's no wrong way to hobby. I'll say it again. If that's what you like, by all means, charge. But these cards, if you're going to get miles out of these factions with single zone cards, you're going to have to take the zone top of turn 1, because all I have to do is blow, hate to say it again, my 3rd NCU that I just don't care about, trigger that needs to be laying around, whoever's flexible, is you're going to just block horses. And I'm going to deny use your zone because I turn off half your deck, right? As far as now, it's much, much easier to keep track of. Now I know you can't maneuver instead of shift. Now I know you can't get certain extra conditions and all these different things. And that is a problem, I think. I think it's going to frustrate a lot of people that mind you, the cards are a little more top loaded. So they do a little more top of the turn, even if you don't have your zone for a lot of factions. But even still, that's a bad feel, man.
And to your point about the importance of activating the NCU if you're playing Targs, and then conversely, if you're trying to take it away from them, we are seeing 2 factions so far that heavily rely on it. So we have Greyjoys, we see Targs now, and I would safely bet that Free Folk are going to want that zone too. So when you have units like the Hrakar that we'll talk about in a little bit, and then you have Greyjoys with the outflank ability, people are going to be gunning for that horse first activation. There's no reason why you wouldn't either want to activate these abilities or deny it from your opponent. So I seriously think that the horse is going to be the most contested zone rather than swords now, just because with a lot of units being nerf down to a 4+ if they're already in combat, I would much rather take the horse away and take the hit from swords now rather than the other way around.
Yeah, especially with the increase in passive damage from things like Horrific Visage and Lannister Supremacy and all these other types, Mummers, Counter-Strike, Jamie Counter-Strike, things like that. You're gonna lower your risk plays, right? You're gonna manage your risk management is going to be okay. What can I get my guarantee value out of? Okay, swinging with 4+ into these guys is kind of problematic, so I want to do that later in the round so that I'm not likely to snowball out if it gets really bad for me. I can mitigate some of this or that, or just maybe not swing at all. Let's just see how the turn plays out. So you're going to be pushing those things off until later in the round anyway. So you're going to end up doing these other things way more, like we're saying again, right? Because again, that's part of why activations are good, is that they give you a way to kind of use a football term, check down, right? Just kind of safely progress the round, progress the advance. And it's still going to be the tactics board. You still don't have a whole lot of 4-point cost or less units. You still don't have a lot of really safe activations. The board does stuff, and it's going to happen.
All right, let's move on to field control. It says when an NCU claims the horse, if the NCU was friendly, you may replace that zone's effect with one friendly combat unit performs one maneuver or retreat action with +1 movement. If the NCU was an enemy, you may force your opponent to replace that zone's effect with one friendly combat unit becomes weakened. They may shift 3 inches. Now, this was a big surprise to me because I never thought that Targaryens would gain a card that was straight up hard control. This card was definitely covered in Attorney Grounds on Monday. Definitely give it a listen. They comprehensively went through the whole deck and gave their thoughts. Charles, what do you think about this?
I mean, again, we're talking about less hard control. Oh, it's gonna be commander specific. Here it is in the main deck, right out the gate. And as we just mentioned, horses has always been one of the big 3 zones. Letters, swords, horses, even in order on the tactics board. Easy to remember, right? And this just says jacks it up. This also makes the rules a little muddier without flank. Technically, the way you have to resolve tactics cards or else the game just doesn't function is that you trigger the claim window with the NCU. Then active player plays cards, which would be the person, if you're to use the enemy part, it'd be the enemy player. Their cards would go on the stack. Then you'd play your card. And then they'd resolve their card. Then you resolve your card. Technically, the NCU with a replacement effect, for instance, like outflanking a replacement ability, would trigger on the claim, and theirs would trigger first. But your card still resolves, so you force a replace of a replace, which is really awkward, but that is how the timing window works, because all those replacement triggers happen before the zone actually resolves. The resolution of the zone is its own step. For people who don't quite follow that tree, it's now much more convoluted because of this card. I would have much preferred to see them get something like Howl and NCU's controls, where it's like -1s to hit, or like force all the terrain keywords on somebody, where like maybe it's because they have all these great archers now, and they're mounted cav, and they're kind of wheeling around your units, and they're peppering you with arrows and keeping you pinned in so they can do what they got to do. That would be very thematic, in that they were physically on the field controlling your actions with peppered shots of arrows and stuff, and they gave you all these crazy terrain keywords and maybe a minus the speed and like other stuff. This is kind of awkward. I agree with you from a thematic standpoint. Incredibly powerful control card. Incredibly powerful control card. I don't expect to ever really see it played with the top part, unless it's a game-winning play.
Yeah, possibly I would have liked to see something like when a friendly NCU claims a horse, you can resolve the usual effect, and then maybe something like another friendly unit within short range can make a 3-inch shift or something like that.
Yeah, how do you feel about hard control on Targaryens, Karl? Field control.
I think I like the idea of it. As you said about, it's really more about like tactics board control, which sucks, right? Like how much is it really field control? I mean, like you guys were saying, like you're not responding with your own units after their move or anything like that. Like it would have been cool if the enemy claims the zone and you get to tutor a swift reposition or something like that. Like
Yeah, basically it's old Varys, the card, and they very specifically reworked new Varys to be the kind of card you're talking about, to where it punishes the board as a way of disincentivizing it, therefore soft controlling it. But instead, they just made a card that was old Varys with no dice roll. It just happens. It's just like, hey,
yeah.
suck it. You don't get to do what you want to do.
Yeah, so yeah, and just like Chris was saying, I agree with you guys pretty much just wholeheartedly. Like even when you claim, it's like +1 speed and okay. It's like how about if I retreat, the enemy doesn't get to pivot? That's field control. How about a follow me, order, or like Chris was saying, or I don't know. It's
Feels awkward. It's just awkward.
yeah, that's all.
Now, for Targaryen players who are excited about this card, you should be. This card is great.
Oh, for sure. I am excited about
We are 5 for 5 of probably the best 5 cards they printed in the reveals. For the record, Targaryen players, this is Targaryen Christmas. This reveal is for you. However, objectively, we use that word a lot around here lately. This card is busted and it's going to frustrate a lot of people.
And that's not what I like to see.
But for Targaryen players, it's a dope card.
Yeah, I always pack up and go home hanging on the feeling of knowing how my opponent also enjoyed the game, right? So like when there's something like this, and that's why I haven't played Stone Throwers in so long, my blessed war machines. I mean, God, I love the idea of those, and they just hurt people's feelings. So
I'm gonna be upset if the Visions of the Flames for Night's Watch don't include at least one of the war machines.
Yeah, right. So just like you said, like the NPE is super easy to see, and it's like but I'm excited to make it work. It is unfortunately, I mean, who knows? FAQ or whatever is going to come out and say, nah, you can't do that. You can't hard counter someone else's outflank or whatever. But
and on that note, I will point out a couple things. To our followers on YouTube who pointed out I did misspeak about terrain keywords. The new hindering just stops you from getting the charge reroll. It's not actually ordered automatically disorderly. I had a bad habit when it first was revealed as saying it's basically auto disorderly, and then I just said it's automatically disorderly in the podcast. That is in fact wrong, and I have accepted it on the YouTube video. But I also want to point out that it has gotten around the community that one of the rule book editors for CMON has said on some such community page that shifting out of combat was an oversight in the rule book, and it is not going to be legal. So you cannot shift out of combat.
Yeah, we all assume that, but it's nice to hear from the words of someone that works for CMON.
I did not assume such things.
And to hear...
No, you didn't.
Yeah, you did not.
Rules as written only.
Yeah, and at some point you kind of have to do that when you're running events live in the moment, right? And we all respect that, and I definitely respected it. But for those of you who are listening and are keeping track of the shift out of combat debacle, a couple of good things. Someone has responded to it, albeit in a very unofficial capacity. And it also means that there is very likely to be an errata or FAQ very close to launch, because that person also said that it is going to be addressed quickly with the release of the new stuff. So all good things, but while we were on the topic of FAQ and errata, when Karl said it, it kind of triggered a memory for me that I did want to kind of go over that for the listeners. For those of you who don't catch all the other content creators, that was covered, and it is fairly important going forward.
I forgive you because it was a mistake, but you used the word debacle, which I'm a fan of. I love that word. So
yeah,
I think it's a great word. All right, unstoppable.
All right, next card, we have Unstoppable Debacle. When a friendly unit activates, this turn, that unit may ignore the dangerous, hindering, and rough keywords, destroy any terrain with the destructible keyword it moves through or ends within 1 inch of. And then we have the secondary effect. When a friendly unit surges forth, that unit gains +3 debacles when maneuvering during this Surge Forth. So it seems like they're going back to the old terrain rules. Karl, I know you've played since the very beginning. So is this how terrain was? If you moved over it, you still suffered the effects, but you would destroy it if it was destructible?
This card makes me want to just set all my stuff on fire. I just want and sorry, that came out of the blue for some folks. But I'm a huge fan of hobby and in-game play of terrain. Okay? And so I have constantly since the beginning been like when you put a whole page of the forest does this and the swamp does this, that's the only way people are going to play it. I don't care what you say in the box directly above that list or below that list, or you could capitalize it, bold it, and underline it at the top and say, these are just suggestions. It doesn't matter. That's how everyone's going to play it. All right. And every time I say, hey, can I get some more suggestions so that I don't have backlash when in an event that I run, I use a river or a house or whatever. And they go, oh, you can use whatever you want. You can put your keywords whatever you want. You can put fucking dangerous in the forest. You can do whatever you want. You can put it on fire. Like, it's all good. And I'm just like, guys, like, you're killing me. And then a card comes out that's so good for exactly for reasons of terrain. It's like, you're killing me. Now you're killing me. Now you're just making fun of me because, like, this card is so, like, directly tied to the terrain system. And that they're so just whatever with the terrain. It's like, okay. So that's my biggest response to this card. You're right. Yes. When you move through destructible, it used to blow it up. So that was the initial.
To answer the question, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had a little triggered moment there, but that's fine. I'm glad we could let you vent about it.
Thanks for sharing, big dog. Thank you.
I haven't vented about it yet because when I first saw this card, I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me! Like, I'm happy. I'm happy in the long run when I settle down and think about it. It's a fantastic card, right? But it just makes me a little triggered about the whole like limited yet open, loosey goosey way they do terrain. It's just come on, just don't have any suggestions, just a list of keywords, or have a whole bunch, like because that's all players are going to use ever in their events.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
Another thing to note about the card, and you guys can hopefully answer this question for me, is if you play this card and you destroy a unit, does the secondary effect come into play? I'm not sure how these type of cards play out when you have the second trigger portion. So do you get the +3 movement if you kill a unit after playing this card?
Absolutely not. Totally
no, the card is already played and is already in your discard.
Good to know.
It's not a secondary paragraph like you see on, like, say, Surrounded and Exposed. It's basically a second card printed on a card. So it's more like the old like half and half cards in Magic, where you had to pick which one it was, one or the other.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, think of it like you have an optional ability or effect. When the trigger comes along in a game, you can then pull that out of your pocket and use it, right? In this case, when the trigger is when a friendly unit activates, you pull it out of your pocket, boom, you use it. That entire piece of that your entire pocket is now used, right? You can't pull another piece out of like. Anyways, I was trying to have a good example there. That kind of went haywire, but
yeah, no, you went like all grandpa on me with like stuck in your pocket and like old peppermint flashbacks. It was bad. Let's not go there again.
So the trigger. So there's another trigger. What I meant to lead to is there's another trigger on the card for that second ability. So you can't trigger it because you can't then pull the same card that's already been used back out of your pocket and you trigger it again. So it's already on the table. It's already in the discard pile. Yeah.
Yeah. This card is good though. This card's real good for Cav specifically, right? You use your Cav maneuver to not even go over the terrain. You can literally just stop next to it, blow it up, so you don't also still take the any damage, which you wouldn't because you ignore dangerous anyway. So you can just go through it. But like you can clear the whole field. So you pretty much don't want to put destructible terrain out against Dothraki now. And Targaryens now because they're gonna just get rid of it.
What's funny is the answer is supposed to be forests, and our Dothraki Outriders are gonna love some forests. So
yeah, for sure. And the other thing is that because this strip ignores the keywords, this counters New Howland CU, which is interesting because you just ignore all the keywords that he's putting in all the terrain. So where the way you work around, like we said, is forests and like bogs. Howland makes all those things, all kinds of things anyway, adds keywords to them. Well, you still ignore them all.
Mm-hmm.
And the bottom part is not negligible. As we mentioned on field control, you'll probably never use the top part. You'll actually use the bottom part a fair bit here because as we go look at the units, they don't have the best defense as far as armor. They have fantastic morale, but we'll talk about that. But you may not want them to get charged or stuck in, right? We don't want cavalry stuck in. So being fast, because you're cav already, speed 6 across the board, I think. Getting at +3, being at speed 9, and then possibly any other speed buffs you get in the faction, means it should be very easy to get out of line of sight from counter charging,
Definitely.
right? Or
Yep.
even just out of range of archers, just completely out of range of archers and crossbows and stuff. To really protect these, get onto a node in certain game modes, especially the backfield, those backfield objectives. Forget which one it is that gives 3 points if you're on the back node, or even if you're playing like Winds of Winter, where you want to go all the way into the deployment zone. You know what I'm saying? Those like weird last ditch plays in some of those game modes. Like this card is really good. This card's really good.
I was just gonna say it's gonna be funny when like when it hasn't developed yet, and you go into like a normal kind of terrain placement plan, and like as the Targaryen player, they just get as close as possible to the to the enemy's terrain with the destructible, and then they just plop this card and like destroy 4 pieces at once. Boom! It's like there goes all the terrain off the board.
All right, let's move on to the next card. We have Blood of the Debacle. Start of any turn. Target one friendly combat unit and attach this card to them until the end of the game. When a friendly unit is destroyed, place 1 order token on this card. While this card has a token, the attached unit's melee attacks gain +1 attack die, and this unit suffers -1 wound from failing panic test. So we see more of this style of card that sort of like how we saw within Tactical Approach and Spoils of War, I believe. It seems like we're seeing a pattern here. Personally, I like these type of cards just because we're seeing less of triggers that just sit dead in your hand.
I'm insulted. That's my thoughts. This card insults me because how do I not know if 1 unit has died? Okay, what, like, I don't know. The whole order. I hate messy tables, right? I'm a fan of bookkeeping off the battlefield, right? And it's like this is gross. Like,
Do you play Night's Watch?
Gotta get the soap out and scrub some stuff with this thing. Like, yeah, I just there's someone's gonna think of a cool system for when you play this card. You don't have to have all this mess on the table, and I'm gonna use it. But anyways,
so part of the problem with that is this, and again, it's the way they worded this card. Target one friendly combat unit and attach this card to them until the end of the game. When a friendly unit is destroyed, place. So it's not retroactive, right? So units that have died before or after matter.
right.
Which is probably what they're trying to avoid here. And I agree with you. It could be a little inelegant. My biggest issue is I thought these cards were cool when I saw them in Baratheons. Because like theirs was like 2 orders, 2 different things, like they stacked, right? You got one, then the next. But now we see 2 factions in a row that just also have them, so it's getting a little overused, probably.
Right. It made sense because they were attrition. You know,
they
were.
Yeah, and they were attrition, so they expected 2 units to die, and they got 2 buffs. The non-attrition factions, though, need 1 unit to die, and they get 2 buffs. That part is bothering me a little bit. Like, Baratheons need 2 order tokens to get the full stack for theirs. Neutrals and Targs both just need 1 unit to die, and they get both modifiers.
Yeah, I wonder if they're just trying to set the bar for the when a unit is destroyed type of card in each faction's deck. But now we're just seeing the pattern. Going back to creativity, I would have liked to see something, every faction getting their own identity, something different. Hopefully, these next cards that we cover with Khal Drogo's commander cards don't set off another triggered moment for Karl.
and before we progress real quick, before the internet flames me again, Spoils of War also adds more than 1 token. It is based on number of tokens. So Baratheons and Neutrals both need 2 units to die to get the full benefits of their cards. Targaryens get 2 conditions for 1 unit dying.
Yeah. All right, so just so I'm not mistaken either, I love the idea of the card. Um, I just wish it was a little more elegant, I guess, if that's the right word. Um, but what I was gonna say, oh, is we had talked about like raiding tactics decks and stuff like that, and like how you know I don't know, this card would be great round one, right? So, like, round five, is it really gonna, I don't know. It's okay. It's all right.
Yeah, but at the same time, like games for Joe by round 5, almost every tactics card's probably dead by round 5.
Mm,
Like most of them
not
are losing farms.
overrun.
But maybe. I mean, it depends on how many units are left, right? Fire and Blood's not, but
Yeah, but it was making me think of that. We were like trying to
yeah,
establish
opening.
like a cool
Yeah,
rating system for base decks and like opening
yeah,
hands and stuff.
yeah. Frame
And it's
opening
like,
hand, yeah.
yeah, it'd be a great opening hand card. So yeah.
Yeah, and that was my answer for the Baratheons, right? Was that I wanted to just hand dump all these buffs like attachment cards early, just be like, just get them out. Just get
Yeah.
5 cards out my deck, get them on the field, and draw 5 more. Like, let's go.
Yeah, maybe maybe Danny lets you start with Blood of the Dragon round in addition to your 3 cards, right? Like because she is Blood of the Dragon or something like that. That'd be cool because it's a totally opening like game card. Right? It makes sense to, anyways. Who knows?
All right,
Who knows?
Adravat.
Yeah, let's get into the big man himself. So we have first card Adravat. If you guys weren't screaming this when you played it in 1.6, you're playing it wrong. The new card says, when Khal Drogo's unit activates, target one enemy in long range and attach this card to them until the end of the round. While attached, melee attacks on this enemy gain critical blow. When that enemy is destroyed, gain 1 victory point. If this card is removed and that enemy has not been destroyed, your opponent gains 1 victory point. And then the secondary effect of start of a friendly turn, draw 1 tactics card. I may be in the minority here. I'm not sure what your thoughts are, Charles and Karl, but I personally love this. I think it's very creative. Whether or not it breaks the game, I don't know. I haven't thought too much into it. I just like the design of it. There's something about it that feels right to me, especially with this commander. What do you guys think?
I can tell you why. I can tell you exactly why. Do you know why this feels right to you? Because you are a neutral player, just like I am. This card belongs in the neutral commander deck. So does 4 commander cards.
Yeah, we did touch up. We touched upon that in the last episode, and I completely agree with you. If you guys missed the last episode, Karl brought up the fact that the Targaryen commanders get 4 cards now, and you replace a particular card in the deck. And Karl brought up the fact that this should have been a neutral thing. I 100% agree with that.
And just because like you could then play with them for when you're bringing that commander to a different faction, they only get 3, right? And then if you're playing all neutrals, they get 4, like stuff like that. You could play with it. Anyways, I still love the mechanic. It's awesome. It fits the Targaryen commander theme as well, so no worries. I'm just jealous because I'm also a neutral player. But but yeah, this card's awesome. It's fantastic. There's the commander is dead. You get a card. Cool. Cycling that out. The main effect itself, I think, is absolutely fantastic. I don't know. Am I worried about it being too good? With the rest of this base deck, maybe. Yeah, we haven't seen anything else but Dothraki, but yeah, I think it's fantastic. I love it. Makes me want to play Khal Drogo, that's for sure.
The first part of the card is cool, but the second part of the card makes it great. Just straight up start a friendly turn, draw a card. You're just cycling at that point.
Yeah, I guess if the situation doesn't call for the top part, but in my honest opinion, like I would hold on to the card and not even use the cycle. Like the top part is so good. Like I don't know. Like
Yeah, I mean, it depends on when you draw and what you're trying to do, right? If you already activated them that round and you're really digging for an answer, like maybe it's field control because you know they go first next turn and they're gonna bring on an outflank unit you can't deal with, kind of thing. Maybe.
true.
I couldn't say you just digging, but you're right. It's gonna be corner case.
Yeah, I mean, in 2 rounds, if I'm able to pull this off twice, like 2 extra victory points. I mean, that's insanely huge. So
You can't do that anyway because are you about 2 different rounds? You mean?
2 rounds, yeah, 2 different rounds.
Yeah. So here's my issue with this card. I'm gonna get on my free folk soapbox for a minute. This card is now yet another card that, while it doesn't blank abilities, counter abilities on units, i.e., turn off insignificant, that gets around the insignificant problem. So we have Raiders, and we probably got more insignificant nerfs coming. Cowardly probably being just attached to insignificant units. This card gets around that already. So this card annoys me in that regard, that I feel like it's another sign of a little bit of
Karl's
overcorrection in
triggered
some
moment.
cases. Yeah. Overcorrection in some cases, and then at the same time, like I said, not quite matching some of what they say. The killiness is going away, things like that. This card, this entire faction is a very killy faction, and it should be, but it's a very, very killy thing to play into. Overall, I think the card's cool. I think the VP manipulation is fine mechanic. I don't think it's busted or too strong. I do think the critical blow is not as potent as it was anymore is a fallacy. I think it's just as good, especially now there's more ways to re-roll randomly as we go through more of these reveals across all factions. There's more way to re-roll even if you're not charging. You got precision on a stick in a lot of factions and things like that. Jorah was spoiled already. His order is precision and rerolls for all attacks. So as you mentioned, like this is real easy to turn on to the we can just delete a unit. Like this card is very powerful. It's going to do its job. Targaryens won't have a hard time killing that unit to get this VP. Very strong card.
All right, next card, Ride by Attack. It says, when a friendly Cav unit selects its action during its activation, morph into a mammoth. So essentially, as this action, you pivot, then perform 1 march action. Even if engaged, it may move through enemies during this march. Enemies it disengages with may not pivot. After completing this march, 1 enemy moved through it suffers 1 wound plus 1 wound for each of that enemy's remaining ranks. I gotta hop over to you, Charles. What do you think as a free folk player?
So a couple takeaways here. I think this is a really cool card. I mean, it's trample. It tells me that there's a good chance. Again, mammoths don't change dramatically. 1 wound plus 1 wound for each rank is only slightly off the total output that it already did. I think the picking a unit is significant and important, where you can't just hit every unit. And I think it's fine. I was one of the early ones to point out that Jorah, the solo, is a cav model. It has got the cavalry symbol. He is a cavalry model. So now Jorah can now ride by attack through a unit. He's much easier to place in a legal place after the march. And Jorah just does 4 wounds to a unit. Just takes a rank off, and now he's in the backfield doing backfield stuff. Or he can do 2 wounds to a solo, which is real interesting as well. So this is a really cool card. It's gonna be real interesting to watch people get frustrated with Jorah, as he, he can unstoppable advance through terrain, not take any wounds, and then still ride by attack, and then just drop a rank off your 3+ armor infantry and not care, and you can't turn around and hit him because they play field control and turn off the horses, right? Like that turn's gonna happen, and people are gonna be real mad, like big mad.
I can't really think of anything off the top of my head that's like, other than the Jorah thing, which was hilarious, but he is cavalry. I'm trying to think of something just too good, but I don't know. I think it's fine. I like the ranks were showing up in the targs. I think that might be the first thing that we see that's rank based. Maybe I'm wrong. But that's supposed to be.
Can we at least agree that this is better than the 1.6 version of the card? Because I feel like that card caused so many issues as far as like questions. How does it work? In my opinion, it was completely non-existent seeing that effect go off. It was just too complicated, I feel like.
Well, I already have a question for this card, so I don't know if. Sure, I think it's better. Yes, I'll agree. It's better. The whole like, is it charging? Is it not charging? Is it can you search forth? Can you overrun? All that stuff is gone. But But like my question is like that pivot before the march, that in the rule book says you cannot end that pivot over an enemy unit, right? So like you're talking huge trays, right? Like so you're gonna have to march, even if you're engaged, you're gonna have to march through like without the pivot because you can't end the pivot hovering over an enemy unit over any unit, right? Because it's not all one thing, right? Unless they change this or FAQ it, like I said, but like as of right now, it's a singular pivot and then it's a march action. So that first pivot is going to have to be clear of stuff. So which is like that sucks, But anyways, so
I don't know about that part. I mean, the current mammoth I think is worded pretty much the exact same way.
Okay. And
you ignore enemy models during the pivot. So I guess the biggest difference I think is Trample says during this action they ignore enemy models. I have to look, but let me double check the wording on that real quick.
All right, while Charles looks that up, let's move on to the next card. We have Assault Orders. When a friendly NCU claims a zone, replace that zone's effect with one friendly combat unit performs one attack action. If this targets Khal Drogo's unit, it may perform one charge action instead. And then this card replaces Sudden Retreat. So replacing Sudden Retreat, I feel like is very thematic because Khal Drogo does not retreat. He doesn't want any of that business. But, it's sort of replacing his commander's ability with... Okay, maybe I'm confusing this with Rattleshirt. Did his card have Onslaught? Did you charge off the horse or
yes,
the swords? Okay, so we're seeing free actions, although it is with a commander card here, which I feel like that's okay. I think it also helps with the Targs in general suffering from activation. So I do like an aggressive card like this being played with his commander. What do you think, Karl?
Yeah. It's fitting, it's thematic, it's with him only as far as the charge goes. Yeah. Solid card. What the card is replacing, I'm sad about because I need that sudden retreat. I could probably pick another one that I would prefer, but I get it. All right, I get it. I get the theme. So yeah, I have no issues with this card whatsoever, except for the once again claim that free actions are going to cost something. So I guess in the designer's point of view, that it's costing a zone. To me, that's silly, but I guess that is technically a cost. You're sacrificing the zone effect you would have to get this instead. So
yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that because even saying, "Oh, it costs a card and the zone." Well, all the free actions that were problematic before, outside of Cav movement, which they still haven't really addressed, particularly, they all still cost you a zone or a card, right, or both, right? Sudden charge was still a problem, and it is and was still just this, like it's
this
the
is
same
more
exact
powerful
tax.
than This is more powerful than Onslaught because it's not just a sword zone.
Yeah, it's
right. Like you can, I mean, you got to get the card, of course, but like this is strong. I like it. It's a commander card. Commander cards can be strong. That's fine, especially if it's keyworded off of the commander himself. Yeah, and it's getting rid of a good card. So I guess that's also a cost because you can put it that way too. Because I like I need those free retreats in my Targ army. So yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine with it.
I mean, guess what? We have two of his cards that have an effect that say start of a friendly turn, draw a card. So if you're pitching and you really need to see this card, you're more likely to see it with the inclusion of Adravat and the next card, Lead by Example. So I feel like this is a card that I would aggressively just try to cycle for.
Yeah, it is pretty great. Like the sudden charge effect is real, right? Like if you're not planning considerably against 1.6 Stark sudden charge, then you're playing against Starks wrong, right? So in this case, it's going to be Drogo. If you're not planning considerably to knowing that assault orders could pop off at any time, then you're playing against Drogo wrong, right? So
last card, we have Lead by Example. After Khal Drogo's unit completes an attack, attach this card to one other friendly unit in long range until the end of the round. While attached, this unit gains +2 to panic test rolls, and its melee attacks gain +1 to hit. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it has the secondary option of start a friendly turn, draw 1 tactics card. I feel like this is the weakest of the 4, but when it works, it works. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I
weird.
got a few. All right, so it's got a fairly limited trigger, which is a good thing. But this goes back to the context of you're gonna see things are gonna hit less consistently. Things are gonna be this, that, and the other thing. When we get down and look at these units, any and all of those units, including 5-point units, are gonna be able to hit on 2s. Possibly with crit blow because the card at the top, right above it, Adravat, things like that. We know there's precision in the faction. We know there's rerolls on all attacks with Jorah, including range. So when we get to looking at the vets later, this card basically puts a unit of vets on 2+ to hit with rerolls and precision, on 2 attacks, so 14 dice, and then they'll also be at a morale of 3+, right? That's crazy. Like, this goes against the design philosophy that they preached for a while, which, as I mentioned last episode, we've now seen enough stuff to know that they kind of oversold that design philosophy, and that's not actually what we're getting in terms of how the game is going to play on the table. And this is another one of those cards that shows it to me. Like, this card is real punchy, real fast.
What do you think, Karl?
Well, yeah, like he nailed it. He nailed it with the beginning, in my opinion, like how it's kind of hard to do. It's like okay. I mean, not hard.
Drogo's just got to attack first. That's it.
Yeah, but I guess, you got to have one other friendly unit in long range. Okay, so yeah, I guess it's not that hard.
And it's till the end of the round. So, like, you could turn 1, take swords. Drogo does something. Maybe he's in a unit of archers.
True.
Archers take shots, play the card, and then you have the full round after that. Do whatever you want.
And what is nice, actually, that it's the only trigger of this trigger in the whole bunch, so you can combo everything else.
Yep.
So I guess I'm wrong on that. So that's cool. The +1 to hit, +2 to panic test rolls. So the +2 to panic test rolls is kind of like, I guess, not as much of a buff because the damage got nerfed for panic test overall, but it's nice to have.
I mean,
especially with game modes that need you to pass panic tests while holding things. So that's cool.
Yeah.
And then the +1 to hit is melee only, so it's restricting that.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think it's thematic. I think it's a proper name for a card, and I think it's not too strong. I think they nailed it. I think they nailed this card.
Glad you're happy about it.
I don't be too strong, but because it's end of the round, right? You gotta set it up nicely. You gotta do as much as you can with a unit that gets this card attached to it, just to fire off a +1 to hit. Like, it's like it's not. I think it's not too crazy.
All right, let's move on to Khal Drogo's actual commander card. We see that he has Expert Duelist. Each time this unit is performing a melee attack, before rolling attack dice, choose 1. This attack deals +1 wound. Or target 1 infantry attachment in the defender's unit and roll a die. On a 3+, destroy that attachment. And then we see Iron Resolve. This unit gains +1 to panic test rolls and suffers -1 wound from failing panic tests. So Iron Resolve being the opposite of Intimidating Presence that we saw in the Bolton spoiler. So I'll just give my thoughts really quick. The obvious thing, he is going to trigger a panic test no matter what after completing a melee attack. This is going to be the jelly if Assault Orders is peanut butter. So we see a combo there. It's just super, super aggressive. Khal Drogo as a character within the lore is very scary. I like how he is very scary in 1.7, but Expert Duelist. This is the issue for me. We already see it. We see an attachment killing card within Vargo, and this may seem trivial for some, but if I'm sitting there and I'm fielding a unit, I'm excited to field this attachment that I spent some time on, and then boom, assault orders into Khal Drogo 3+, say goodbye. I feel like that is so. See, now I'm getting triggered. This is my moment to get triggered.
How about this? Start a turn swift reposition, then claim the zone assault orders, and then after your attachment dies, then he does a lead by example.
Yeah. Oh yeah, overrun, right?
Yeah,
It's not an order.
Overrun.
It's not
yeah.
an order. 2 attachments done in 1 action. I mean, I'm not
You
going to say
actually-
too much about it. I want to stay positive. I think he represents what he is in the lore. Yeah, he's crazy scary. But I'll turn it over to you guys.
Yeah. Okay. So I agree with you 100%. I like Iron Resolve. I just agree with you 100% with Expert Duelist. Like the theme is all there. I'm overall super happy with everything as a whole, as a bunch. And then we get to the single die roll effect. And like maybe they thought there's just no other way to do it or something. I don't know. I mean, I've been so happy so far with all these reveals that almost every single like D3 roll or single die roll has been removed. And I'm just like I've been so happy. So here we see Expert Duelist. 3+ to start that attachment. Okay. So each time this unit is performing a melee attack, before rolling attack dice, choose 1. So like, it's not like it's a risky play. So you could just not do that wound at all if you're going for the attachment. So that's kind of a little balancing thing, I guess. I just don't like it at all. I'd rather it be like, or blank the attachment for X amount of time, or I don't know, something like that. I don't like it. It's just me. Just do +1 wound. That's fine. That's enough. I don't know.
What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's another one of these kind of double speak things, right? Oh, we want you to play more attachments. They're gonna be more important than ever. Here's more ways to kill them. So I'm still not gonna play them because one, if you look at the points of these units, I still can't afford them. Especially when you look at this list, you can get to 8 activations exactly in this list, and it's a beautiful list with just what they've already seen for Targaryens. To be honest, it looks like a great list to play. 0 attachments other than the commander. Want to know why? No points for them. And if they were, you play the mirror, he just kills you, right? You play Vargo,
Yeah, they just die
you
anyways.
just die. But I will say, don't sleep on the +1 auto wound because that is a guaranteed panic check, and that matters in game modes, specifically with cavalry only having 2 ranks. So it's hard to benefit from if you have equal or more ranks than your opponent, or you have more ranks than your opponent. Maybe I might double check if it's equal or more. I'm blanking at the moment. Take the token away. Just from attacking, because you start at 2, right? You have to do a bunch of wounds. So getting to that panic check, which is still one of the most consistent ways to cause damage, even though it is reduced by 1, it's not a ton. Getting that D3 still matters. So forcing the panic check, getting them below those ranks. If they fail the panic check, you get the token anyway. Things like that is going to matter in playing game modes, which is what the cavalry lists struggled the most about, was playing the game modes because they just couldn't kill things fast enough. This is going to go a long way to allowing them to at least take tokens or at least get them down to that second rank consistently so they can contest. This is going to be it's a very important, that top bullet is actually very important for playing the game, how it's played at the top level, which is for game mode versus tabling your opponent. However, unfortunately, there's also this just nuke your attachment secondary ability, which is kind of cool. I agree, it's kind of thematic. Khal Drogo's supposed to be a gangster, coming in, dropping dudes. However, it's real spiky, and spiky things in games are not great.
I would have liked to see something like for Expert Duelist, maybe Khal Drogo's unit and the defender both make a morale test, and then the difference the difference of that roll, that unit would take hits or wounds or something like that.
That's actually something that kind of Warhammer Fantasy used to have, when you can challenge with heroes. Champions and units can challenge, and basically you pull them out. You literally remove them from the unit, and they did their stats against each other, their attacks, and like the difference with dual stuff. Like they literally, you took the model out the tray, put it to the side, resolve their 1v1 like Trojan War, like Achilles versus Hector style, and then in some cases overflow wounds would carry over into the combat to resolve the combat. But those two dudes literally had a knife fight on their own on the side. And that was always one of the coolest parts. It's actually why I played Warriors of Chaos for so long.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. That's exactly a great idea.
We'll move on from this, and I'll just close out his card by saying the ability to kill attachments with a single die roll, I don't like it at all. If you kill the enemy attachment, especially early game, you're already at a disadvantage because we see many of the 1.7 game modes benefiting from having a field commander. Getting that +1 point is huge. And also, a lot of cards you will see are completely useless if you kill the commander. So, I'm not a fan.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't stick around for the units, even though I really, really love to. So I'll just totally agree with you and say I just feel like they have a really cool idea and sense of the theme and what they want it to like accomplish, and then they fall back on like a single die roll effect, and it happens like we've seen it through many different things, and that's why I've been so happy with all those being removed and the theme staying strong, and then Expert Duelist just still has it. So I'm pretty bummed on it, but that's unfortunately going to do it for me tonight, guys. I gotta bounce.
Karl, thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure, man.
It's super awesome to be here. It's a pleasure, and catch you guys later, and I'll listen to this later.
Yeah, man, had a great time. See you, Thanks for stopping by.
All right, Charles, let's do speed round.
Yep.
We'll quickly go over each one. We have the Dothraki veterans. Big change here. They got a point reduction cost. They are now 8 points, and their abilities are hitting on 3+ with a short range bow, 7/5. We have their melee attacks are hitting on 3+, 7/5. 5 defense. They were 4 and 1.6, and then they have a morale stat of 5+. They got swift retreat. So after an enemy completes a melee attack on this unit, perform 1 retreat action. They have a big change here, quick fire. After this unit completes a maneuver or retreat action, you can perform 1 ranged attack action. So obviously, you'll no longer see the play of take the swords, shoot in, and then charge in. Essentially, the Bachelor's Girl's ability, but sort of the opposite here with quick fire. Charles, what are your thoughts on this?
They're really good. I mean, we saw Ranger Trackers became a staple in Night's Watch, the end of 1.6. These guys are basically that, right? Quick fire, more maneuverability, but very similar play style. If you took we saw a lot of people taking Ranger Trackers in the Watch Marshal in 1.6, which was arguably a more aggressive gameplay style. Versus 2021, at 8 points with the Watch Marshal, these come in at 8 points and have better stats and overall higher output. So strictly a better unit. They're fantastic. I expect to see a lot of Dothraki fans playing one unit and probably at least one of their 2 list pairs, because there's not a lot of reason not to at 8 points. This is also probably one of the best 8 to 7 point units we've seen in the game revealed so far. Just because the extra action economy. At 8 points, it's hard to get your points in a game, right? It just is. So having 2 attacks, a free disengage, 3+, 7/5 ranks, 5/5 defensive stats is huge. Because while we keep talking about Panic going down by 1, that's actually not a big difference. It's really not. You're still pretty much taking the same amount of damage you did from Panic before, but that's going to play greatly into things like Lannister Guardsmen, which we do think are going to be fairly prevalent, and things like that, right? You have a lot of Panic-based mechanics and things like neutrals and stuff like that. That morale stat is going to matter dramatically, and game modes also. So the 5 across the board, you're going to see, we can sum that up. 5 across the board for all units. Guess what, guys? 5 up is really, really good. That's why whenever they said Night's Watch, we're going to average a 5, everybody was like, holy smokes. Well, now you also have Dothraki. So real big change to that unit.
It fits in when you have cav units thematically. I felt like 6 was a little bit too high. I feel like they're more brave than that. So seeing them at a 5, I think is reasonable.
Yeah. I'm just saying it's across the board average for these Dothraki units. That's a big upgrade that I don't want them to undervalue. Just because Panic went down though, it's not a big deal. It's actually a really big deal because Panic didn't go down enough, and some of the highest passive damage we've seen added to the game, which is a lot, is Lannister Guardsman and Horrific Visage. Right, both of them can put out a lot of damage. Considering you're trying to get through these units now, because they don't have a lot of ranks. Horrific Visage is not as bad, but again, it's only one less, right? You're still taking another chunk of damage, and more units have it, and things like that. Like, it's real important.
All right, so I don't know if you have much to say about this next unit. We have the Screamers, same attack profile, but the biggest change we see is they get Furious Charge. When you're charged by this unit, you become vulnerable. That's a buff, straight up buff.
6-point unit at the 3+, when we thought the baseline for 3+ was 7 points. That's a big add. Speed 6 with the cap charge, put it in vulnerable token. That's better than most of the 6-point infantry we've seen by a long shot for all the obvious reasons.
They're cav too, so you get the free movement. This is a scary unit. So
yeah, it's an 18-inch threat range. Realistically, they're only probably going to be gutsy enough to go for a 2+ charge on average if they don't have to do anything more than that. But that's still a 14-inch threat range to most things in the game's average of really trying to push 8 tops. So they're going to out-threat you, so that 5 armor is not going to matter, because they can reliably get to you from outside bow range, which is 12 inches, even with a shift 14.
Mhm.
So at a 6-point unit that can put out that kind of damage, on, say, their second player, your archers go up, still can't quite shoot them. Maybe they shift with their shift card, or maybe it's a Varys trigger. And then the next turn, they charge you, and then the next turn they finish you. It's pretty potent at 6 points.
All right, and then we'll talk about the Dothraki Outriders here.
This unit is interesting.
This is very interesting. Number one, they lost Nimble. But with losing Nimble, they gain Outrider's Bow. So same ranged attack profile, but now with Outrider's Bow, if this unit has not performed their cav movement, becomes long range. So now we're seeing Outriders more versatile. They can now sit on an objective and still have value. Another big thing, they now have a melee attack, which is quite decent. It's a 5/4 hitting on a 4. I feel like at 6 points, this is a core unit. I'm sure we're going to see these being played more often on the table.
Yeah, this unit is great. This unit dunks on a lot of other things that have been spoiled so far, right? This is also the Rider's Bow is basically an aim mechanic, and that's brand new to the game, and I really like that. I appreciate that. But yeah, basically this makes, we've hinted at several times, they've done a lot of little things to help make sure this cav list that Dothraki can field, have a chance to play the game mode, because again, at the higher table, that's how the game is played. At an event, it's really focuses on the gameplay, on the game mode itself. They now have that option. I do think this becomes one of the highest included units across Targaryens, regardless of whether you're playing a Grey Worm type commander where you really have to invest in an infantry unit as well. 6 points is pretty easy to squeeze, and these guys are incredibly versatile. Again, we see a 3+ attack on this time on a range attack again, and a 6-point unit that's also long range. So for all you people who are worried about your 6 and 7-point crossbowmen, this is a decent sign that they at least have a chance at coming out with a 3+ long range shot, because we now have a 3+ long range unit in the game. And these guys would still get their shift, by the way. They have to forfeit their free maneuver, but they don't forfeit their shift. So this is still just a true blue 6-point, 3+ long range unit at that point in time. They're just crossbowmen. They're just longbowmen. So it's very likely we still see Landers of Crossbows, Night's Watch Builder Crossbows come in at the 3+ long range, 6 to 7 dice-ish threshold at 6 points.
All right, last unit here. We have the Hrakars. They have 6 movement, 3 dice on 6s. They have 6 wounds, 4 defense, 4 morale, and they get vicious and outflank, which is the most important ability on this unit here. So outflank, of course, you put an NCU on the horse zone, they come out on a flank.
Yeah, they're real good. They're limited at 2. I don't think you're going to take 2. So you're like, oh, 2 in every list. It's only 10 points. Yeah, it's not enough wounds on the table. 12 wounds for 10 points is not, it's actually 1 full infantry unit at which you want 5 points. But again, you now have a 5-point unit that hits on a 3+ and 6 dice. Always with vicious and a 4/4 save. It's actually going to be pretty hard to get in 6 wounds of damage on them on a non-charge attack.
Yeah.
And outflank is a real big deal. We've seen it in several game modes where it really matters getting that backfield. But Dothraki wanting the horse zone so bad for so many things, they're going to have a chance to replace that zone. And for any faction that also wants to play the horse zone, you're going to have a hard time. I feel sorry for Greyjoys because field control can stop their outflanked, and they don't have a field control, nor do they have a way to get a maneuver to turn around. So units like this, plus things like Ride By, put Greyjoy as they exist currently in a real bind, in a real way. And then cavalry, you can't take ranks off a solo. You can't really take ranks off of cavalry reliably. Greyjoys are going to have a hard time playing against these units in particular.
This is a crazy unit. I agree that I would probably only take 1 just because, like you said, smart players are going to try to deny the horse. But it is a good point that you say that Greyjoys are just outclassed, especially with the inclusion of Targaryens having field control. Yeah, I feel like in 1.7, Targs have the ability to rule the roost. They may become S tier. From what I see, at least A tier. Just with
a really good game mode player with another tactically strong faction, we haven't seen them all yet, will be able to solve a lot of these kinds of problems if their factions have the tools. And the Targaryen player is not a great game mode player, because while they gave the cavalry list a way to play game modes and scenarios, they're still not built for it because so many of them care about ranks. However, a tactically solid Targaryen player is going to have a real fair fight. It's going to be a lot more 50-50s at the top table with these Targaryen units, even into an equally experienced, also strong faction. I have a hard time seeing many reveals being a bit more spicy than this one.
What I do like to see here is they really fleshed out what a Dothraki army can look like. We see a lot of synergies between the commander, the cards, the units, and we're coming off of a 1.6 where dragons were released, and dragons, they have their particular style, although it is limited just because dragons are expensive to field. But there's really only one way you can play them. You go for table, where I'm seeing 2 distinct different play styles here. We don't know what dragons look like in 1.7 yet, but I can't imagine that it's going to change that much. Overall thoughts on the reveal before we close it out?
These guys blow out pretty much every other reveal we've seen, honestly. In terms of flavor wins, there's a lot of them here. As terms of units, I'm happiest to see changed, and I would love to play. I still don't know if this beats Sentinels, Baratheon Sentinels for things. I'm like, yeah, that's a super cool piece for that faction, and I'm pretty hyped to see them played. Even Outriders are really cool, but they're still just a turret. We've seen long range units, but so it doesn't do it for me. But like I said, I have a couple of issues with the overall power curve of this compared to everything else. This seems pretty pushed compared to what we've seen. Because this deck and these abilities and these units would be pushed in 1.6. Let's be honest about that real quick. This many cheap 3+ attacks on cav bodies in 1.6 would be a problem right now, much less 2021. So, man, if you're a Targaryen player, especially if you're a Dothraki fanboy specifically, because there are a lot of them. And I'm not going to say, oh, I've been a fan the whole time. I didn't come to this game for fluff. I can give a flip about Targaryens. I think Jason Momoa is cool. And I appreciate his character the whole 9 days he was on set, right? But, it seems he was real short. But for people who want to see them have a greater end than when they charged to death in the last season into the undead horde for no real reason and just got deleted. this will be your recompense, right? You get to get at it again there and have some glory and play Khal Drogo and live the dream. So I'm happy for those players. But the theme for me is I have some concerns. So I want to see the battle reports come in. If these cards get imported into online play, another big shout to CMON. They're giving us a lot of information that we didn't think they'd give us. In fact, they said they wouldn't give us. And they're giving it to us. So when y'all get some games in there, let me know. Tell me how it plays out because I'm suspicious. Looks a little sus.
My quick thoughts. You guys know me. I want to stay positive, and I'm very positive. I'm excited to field this army. My one slight complaint was the whole expert duelist thing. I felt like they could have been a little more creative with redesigning that ability. But yeah, let's do our weekly shout outs. Charles, what do you got?
To everybody playing in the Slaughterhouse event, everybody's having a good time. The community's doing a good job of answering questions. We have a lot of new people playing. A lot of vets are stepping up in a big way. Commander Bob has been crushing it, helping people for games and schedule games. So, another just a good moment to be proud of the community. What should be a lull and a moment of doubt because the release schedule has been hype and people jamming games and streaming games and having fun. And, respect to everybody out there taking the time to keep playing games and help new people out. And super excited to see people playing games, and it's been awesome.
Yeah, definitely, no doubt. And when we wrapped up week 1, I was pleasantly surprised how smooth it went. Everyone got in their games. It is I believe a 48-person tournament. So, I was happy to see that no one really had any issues. Now, my weekly shout out goes to Bartender. And if you guys don't know who Bartender is, he is the guy who puts in work to update the TTS mod. I would say he is the sole reason that we were all able to still enjoy this game during the pandemic. He is just a saint, and he is constantly putting in work to not only keep the TTS mod running, but he's also adding in the updates as these visions come through to make sure that we are able to play with 1.7 armies and cards and stuff like that. So big shout out to Bartender. And then to close out my show, as always, I thank you to the patrons. We have Stovetop, who kept us company. He played his Slaughterhouse match today. So he lost to Max, unfortunately, but he's getting in more Song of Ice and Fire by playing 2 matches today and then coming in to listen to us record this podcast. So shout out to him. Shout out to my newest patrons. We have Mad Hatter. Thank you for signing up as a tier 3 patron. And also shout out to Jeff Gatlin, who is a patron and also the next guest for the battle report that's coming out. So stay tuned on Sunday. I feature Jeff, and I think it's a good one. Clegane Bowl. Everyone should get hyped for that. I think I'm done for the night. So thank you everyone for listening, and we are out.